So thank you very much, Valeria, for this introduction. We have had the honor as the digital ministers of European countries to do all that is in our power to support the Ukrainian fight for freedom. And we are here to say that you can always count on us. And we are very impressed by what you have done. And I am very lucky to live so close to the coolest country of 2030, which, as Mikhailo said, will be Ukraine. So I'm very happy to host today's discussion because it will focus around disinformation around how all that is happening in Ukraine now can be seen or should be seen to the outside world. And I would like to once more welcome the distinguished panelists. And my first question is to Mr. Khashayar Farmanbar from Sweden. And I understand that Sweden has created a new agency for psychological defense. How can that and other measures be used to fight disinformation? Thank you.
Yeah, it's working. Thank you for your question and thank you for being here. I might say I really admire what Ukraine has been doing, both before the war with your DIA and also after war, of course. But one thing that this horrible, illegal aggression and war that Russia is doing is waging on Ukraine has shown is the need for cybersecurity. And one part of cybersecurity is actually having being able to handle false information and psychological attacks. So in January this year, Sweden launched a new agency called Swedish Psychological Defense Agency that we established, and it will be driving force for coordination and development of Sweden's psychological defense. That means supporting many actors online, that means working to strengthening the public resilience, to quickly and early discovering what kind of psychological attacks is coming from outside or from within, and being able to counter that through other agencies, whether it's an information campaign or whether it's cooperation with the online platforms. I think we need that combined view that an agency like that can give for being to be able to handle this kind of warfare, if you want it, online warfare that happens. And it's also not only during wartime. I mean, we've seen it even before war times, how platform medias help to thrive on increased polarization and also with huge with part when also false information is part of it. So I think this is one step that we all can look at and maybe take to make the world a better place.
Thank you very much. Another very cool approach to fighting disinformation comes from Lithuania. So Eglė, if you could tell us a bit more about the elves from Lithuania, and has that proven to be a successful way to tackle disinformation in this difficult situation?
Thank you very much. So Ukrainians know this pretty well. Lithuanians, Latvians, Estonians probably post 60 years ago. We had forest brothers who were fighting the Soviet Union when everybody thought that everything is over. I think the last Lithuanian partisan was killed 16 years after the occupation, hiding somewhere. So drawing it back to today and present times, we have an army of elves, that's how they call themselves, not trolls, elves, good elves, around 10 to 20,000 individuals who work on a voluntary basis, who worked with big tech before they have improved their algorithms in order to remove certain post groups promoting hate, anti-state propaganda, etc., etc. So we are very proud of their actions. As bureaucrats, we are always looking for ways how to improve and scale this. However, there are certain challenges with that. When the governmental sector touches certain private initiatives, sometimes it turns out to be worse than it was before. So we're very modest with our approach. We're helping them to find PPP opportunities and scale themselves further. But this is an example that I'm sure it exists in other countries as well. We're proud of their activeness in Lithuania and hope it continues.
Thank you very much. And my next question is to Bozhidar from Bulgaria. How do you define the major problem concerning disinformation in your country, and how do you see the role of social media in this?
First, thank you to Ukraine for the event, but more importantly for fighting not only for your freedom, but also for Europe and the whole world. I could talk about the cybersecurity where I'm an expert, and I could bore you with all of the details about certs and threat intel sharing, etc. But I want to give you the broader picture that we see. Bulgaria is part of Eastern Europe, and Russian influence has been strong there for a long time. They have been pushing their narratives before the war, and they're pushing their narratives after the war started. While they're attacking Ukraine, they're also attacking Eastern Europe with disinformation campaigns. They use the European values of free speech to undermine free speech and undermine European values. Their channels are many, but social networks are indeed one of their primary channels. Basically, troll factories amplify anonymous websites which spread the Kremlin narratives. We know how it works. But governments can't just block a given website or a given group. We can't do that because in 4 years, the next government might block us and our speech. So we have to act smart. We should strike the mechanism, not the information itself. Governments shouldn't determine which is right or wrong. Our suggestion, and I've been in Brussels last week to push for that, is to regulate the algorithms. Regulate the algorithms of social networks which amplify these troll attempts. We have a lot of precise proposals on the technical implementation. We are discussing that with social networks and with Brussels. But we should make it a focus of social networks that this is an issue. It undermines public discourse in Eastern European countries and Europe in general to drive opinion to a pro-Kremlin stance. I've been criticized why I just don't do the cool stuff that we just saw earlier with digitizing the public sector, with removing bureaucracy, with giving EID, and I'm doing those, but we have to act on the systemic risks. We are here for that. If we introduce EID and no bureaucracy, it will do us no good if the Kremlin propaganda wins the hearts and minds of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the most important man when it comes to digital in Brussels for the upcoming half a year will be Petr Očko from Slovakia. Sorry, Czech Republic. Sorry for that. Sorry. And so, could you tell us a bit more about? What the Czech presidency wants to achieve, and what do you want to push forward in the area of the digital agenda to efficiently fight propaganda and disinformation? So I understand that you had some developments, interesting ones in the Czech Republic recently regarding that. So if you could also tell us a bit more about that, that would be very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for the invitation, and I would like to express my great admiration to the brave fight of Ukraine, and also on the digital front. What we have seen was really amazing, and congratulations to that. And as Czech Republic, we will definitely help as much as we can. This is the first thing I wanted to say. And also during our presidency, that will start on the 1st of July, definitely Ukraine will be one of the topics on many levels, also in digital. So I can promise that we will discuss it, and you will be invited definitely to a few of our events, and I will come back also to what we are organizing. But Janusz, you have mentioned, and we were communicating about that, some of the best practice that we can do in Europe fighting propaganda and disinformation, as it's a real war actually on the internet now. And one thing I wanted to mention is, and I think it's good that the European Commission actually supports that, is a project that is called Central European Digital Media Observatory, CEDMO, that is actually part of European Digital Media Observatory hubs that are now financed from the CEF Telecom, and will be financed from Digital Europe. And CEDMO, Central European Digital Media Observatory, it's actually one probably the only one that is actually in Eastern Europe. So I think it's the hub that is most involved in Ukrainian crisis, and definitely this is a topic for us. And the things that they are actually investing the money in are especially to actually develop the algorithms for fact checking, because you need some fact checking. But also actually to understand how the disinformation gets rooted in the society, because actually what shows the research already now, actually only by fact checking you will not convince big parts of the society. So you see it with vaccination. That was actually the crisis before. Actually, you know it also from your countries. Actually, what shows research from SEDMO, actually, and it's interesting in the context of this war, of course, that that the part of society that identified itself with the Western values, with the democracy, was in the Czech Republic, or I think it was in the Central Europe, more than 80% vaccinated. But the part of the society that was a small part, of course, that did not identify with the Western democratic values was vaccinated much less. It was like 50 or 60%. So there is, and this divide is also when we speak about propaganda and disinformation related to Ukraine war. It's difficult to do just fact checking. We saw all the information, but we need to invest into media literacy. We need to invest into education. It's a long time. Actually, we will not change it in a few weeks, unfortunately. But we need to do it more and more, because we have to actually be ready for another crisis like that. So this is one important point, and disinformation definitely will be one of the important topics for the Czech presidency. Actually, at this moment, I can say that in September, the second half of September, together with SEDMO, we organize a conference in Prague, so you are welcome. And on the European level, we will definitely push for faster implementation of strengthened code of practice on disinformation. That is also important document. Actually, most of big tech actually has signed for code of practice on disinformation. That helped a lot. Now they are working on a strengthened code of practice on disinformation. And I believe it will be also a topic for us to implement it. And the last but not least, definitely one of the topics for us during the Czech presidency of the EU will be cybersecurity. Again, many events, but the most important event will be high-level digital conference in Prague in the beginning of November. The first day will be dedicated to cybersecurity. Definitely, it will be also. It will reflect the Ukraine war, but I hope the war will be over by the time, and we will speak about the future together with Ukraine.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, I had Slovakia on my mind from the very beginning. So now, Veronika, you have introduced emergency legislation to fight Russian disinformation very quickly after the war started. So what experience do you have from that? Because this has been a very far-going initiative, but maybe it would be best to hear how it has worked.
Thank you. Just let me tell you at the beginning that we support strongly Ukraine, and I met Mikhail just 2 weeks before the war. We were at the DIA summit, and what I saw the country with a great dynamism, with great energy, with a lot of smart people who want to take care about their families, and the country who was developing very fast. And I came home to Slovakia and I said, wow, I never thought that the DIA ecosystem is such a great thing. And we planned for cooperation between our team, between the Ukrainian teams and Slovak teams with respective field. And then 2 weeks after, there was this terrific Russian aggression. Please, we don't call it war in Ukraine, we call it Russian aggression. And as a neighbor of Ukraine, Slovakia, it's very important for us that Ukraine is a free country, that Ukraine has its own right to decide on their own destiny they want to pursue. then it's prosperous country. So it's very important for Slovakia, and we try to help Ukraine how we can in military, with military domain, with humanitarian aid, and also with the refugee crisis, but also in the digital field. So, and I really would like to reiterate that it's very important that the aggressor is defeated and the Ukraine will win. And it's also very important for the stability of Europe, for the prosperity of Europe, and for whole destiny of all European nations. And I want also to say that we support the Ukrainian membership in the European Union, because we think that the place of the Ukraine is between the family of European nations. As far as the digital is concerned, so yes, 2 days after the war, we introduced, I admit, is an extreme act, extreme law. We introduced a special act, emergency amendment to the Cybersecurity Act, and we gave the National Security Authority the power to temporarily block the access to the websites that spread dangerous content and propaganda. So the authority, National Cybersecurity Authority, act very quickly, and they took down several of the major disinformation sources in Slovakia. But I have to say that, for example, in one case, one of the collaborators of this website was a Russian spy. So police is accused by police of being Russian spy recruited by Russians. So this was, we acknowledge, this was an extreme act. I think it helped within the disinformation landscape, but now we amend the law in order to take the process through the courts. So because in the initial act, the websites did not have the right to appeal. Yeah. So now we make amendments to the law, and the websites and owner of the websites will have right to appeal, and then there will be the due process going through the court. But we think that you know that Slovakia is as Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, we are in the sphere of the Russian propaganda. This is really a hybrid war waging on our territories and trying to win our hearts and minds of our people. So the fight against disinformation, we think it's very important in order for the cohesion of our society. Also, I think in the European context. So this is one measure, and maybe later we will speak about another measures. We will introduce the legislation to regulate the platforms. I met with Meta representative, also from Google and YouTube and Twitter. And we see that there is really a lack of auto-regulation by big platforms. Therefore, we want to introduce the regulation as similar to Germany, and we will define the dangerous content, and then we will enforce the platform to regulate the dangerous content. So this will come in few months. Unfortunately, the best way it would be if the platforms and big society are able to auto-regulate themselves. But we see that we created an animal who really spread a chaos through our society. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a side question: do you know the numbers? How many sites actually were blocked? How many of these disinformation outlets?
It was we in Slovakia we didn't have a huge amount of websites, but those websites, it was amount up to 10 websites. They have a huge number of followers, and a huge impact in society. So these were an important step because they lose the channel to spread the disinformation. And as I said, it was really the collaborator is investigated as a Russian spy. So, but now we want to amend the law and we really want to have a long-term instrument to fight disinformation.
Okay, thank you. And Francesca from the Cyber Peace Institute, because aligned with the need to have a multi-stakeholder approach in fighting mis and disinformation, what is the role of the civil society in this process?
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the invite, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to support the cause and also to basically to bring our expertise at the disposal of everyone, and specifically of the Ukrainian citizens and governments to use our services, specifically with the lens of how we can support civil society. So thank you so much for the question. And often I would like to give a slightly different perspective, and it was, I think, an excellent panel in having a very good overview of good practices that we can learn from. And as well, I think we need to reflect 1 second on the fact that often when we think about disinformation, it's not something that is, let's say, just happening online, but it has physical impact. And it impacts people in a way that it's really important to understand, which is also the harm that it might cause. So what's happening, for example, if people receive, let's say, false information, they might flee from one place to another one, ending up in even more dangerous and risky situation. This is not something that we immediately think, because we've talked a lot about, I mean, a digital environment, but digital has a very strong physical impact. And at the Cyber Peace Institute, we started tracking, and you can find it on our website. Basically, we started tracking how cyber attacks and operations have been targeting infrastructure and civilian objects. And cyber attacks against Ukrainian civilian objects and are numerous and varied from, I mean, we discussed before a little bit about cybersecurity, so from wiper malware, for example, attacks to SMS campaigns, from DDoS attacks to web defacement. And we try to, I mean, basically to classify the different attacks in terms of like what we call the 4Ds, so destruction of system, disruption of services, the spread of disinformation, and compromise of data. Just to give some data, we have tracked over 60 cyber attacks, operation or campaigns against organizations in Ukraine since the start of the year. And we also started tracking over 110 incidents in countries other than Ukraine, but related to the conflict, for example, Russia, Belarus, and other EU countries. I always like to say that beyond the data comes the people, and that's what we care about. And also, I think it's important to make a link between what we've seen, for example, what we've learned before we were thinking about learning during the pandemic. Often misinformation is very strictly linked also to cyber attacks, what is called, for example, hack and leak. And so this is also something that we need to bear in mind. Also, there is another aspect. Misinformation is very subtle because it's attacking people when they need to find fast, reliable, and trustworthy information. And this is particularly relevant when we think about civil society. Think about all the NGOs, for example, that are in Ukraine in this moment supporting people. They often are not equipped for that because they are equipped for delivering aid, they are equipped for delivering food. And so, honestly, I mean, often the digital realm and the potential cyber threats are not on top of their minds, and they are not skilled for this. Therefore, what we are trying to do is, on one hand, to raise knowledge, information, and awareness, for example, via basically via tracking attacks and informing the people about what we are seeing, about the threats that they might be facing. And we also have a specific program that is called the Cyber Peace Builders, by which we are supporting for free NGOs that are active in the field and that can basically boost their, what we call the cybersecurity posture in a way. And it's very relevant to what my colleagues have said before. First, it's not something that is happening overnight. So you need to build a trusted relationship, for example, with the civil society and with the overall ecosystem. So with the companies that are, for example, involved in our cyber peace builders because they are providing volunteers for supporting NGOs, with governments because we need to discuss how we can make better policy making and regulation with the inputs that we gather from the civil society, with the inputs that we gather from people. And so I think that civil society organization can both raise the voice and also support the most vulnerable and helping the ones that are supporting the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And since our time is a bit limited, I'll just ask for a quick round of one question for each one of you. How do you think that the tech giants of this world can support what we have been talking about? What is the main role that they should play? So starting from you.
Yeah, I think tech companies play a major role here. I mean, they have the opportunity, they have the possibility to limit, to handle the filter bubbles or the polarization that happens online, and they also have the power to commercialize on that polarization because it drives interaction. And one thing is, if we don't want to end up in large or far-going regulations, then the tech companies need to take a much larger responsibility than they are doing right now. And of course, regulation is always hard. It's easy to say we regulate everything that we see harmful, but I think as my colleague from Bulgaria said, who says harmful after next general election? What will be harmful then? The line between limiting via regulation harmful information and hindering free speech can be really thin, and therefore it actually is a great responsibility on the tech companies to self-regulate and do more. Having said that, I want to say that once upon a time the car was a new product. There was no regulation around it, how it would be used. We've spent 100 years regulating where you're allowed to drive cars, the security, the environmental impact of it, and everything. Tech companies, it's a new product as the car once was. We need to look at regulation on how we can regulate it to benefit humanity more, and I think we need to do that hand in hand with the tech companies.
I think tech company, as you said, could do or must do much more they are actually doing. I think the two things are important. For example, a large chunk of propaganda or disinformation is shared or spread by bots, and as a civil society, you can't identify them, especially on Facebook platform. There was a huge initiative, I think, on Twitter, but it's impossible to do it without the cooperation with Meta. So I think that the role of tech giants is very important. We can't fix it as a civil society. We can't fix it as an activist. They have to get involved. This is first thing. And the second thing is digital literacy. And I think that as a state, as a European Union, we are really lagging behind. We launched in Slovakia a huge project on digital literacy of senior citizens, and we try to educate them in terms of disinformation, propaganda, and online theft, online security, and so on. But this should be a common effort to really to have digitally literate citizens. We did it for example, for early school living. We did it as a benchmark for the European Union. We set up a benchmark, and all countries are following the benchmark, trying to fulfill the criteria. I think we should do the same for digital literacy, setting the standards, setting a curriculum at the European level, because you can regulate, but it's not possible to regulate everything. And I think the education, critical thinking, and digital literacy is the key to success.
Thank you. Bozhidar, please.
Well, I fully agree that tech giants should acknowledge and realize their responsibility in the digital realm and that they have effect on our societies. We can't just expect them to counter their business models with particular limitations to their algorithms. So in these cases, as always has been, regulation is needed. As I said, it should be smart, it should be focused. For example, fake news websites, they actually make money to pay for the trolls to spread them through Google Ads. I've seen it. There was a whistleblower in my office showing me how with one click they can create a fake website and then monetize through Google Ads. Facebook algorithms spreading disinformation to increase. This morning I was suggested a fake news article about Ukraine. So they have to understand, accept their responsibility, and put more resources, more focus on handling those aspects, and maybe taking a little bit of their business model away.
Thank you, Petr.
Yeah, so one point I will mention, I will repeat that I think let's make big tech actually sign the strengthened code of practice on disinformation. I have here the communication of the Commission that is actually something that that already foresees what will be the content of this, and there are many points I can read. Common understanding of impermissible manipulative behavior, strengthened commitments to limit impermissible manipulative behavior, adjusting commitments, cooperation and transparency. It's like 25 measures like this. So this is something will be out in June probably, and let's make them to sign as soon as possible, and let's communicate with them, and let's try to make them cooperate on many levels. Sometimes probably they need help. I remember a discussion with Big Tech 2 or 3 months ago. It was in Paris. I will not mention the name of one of the biggest social networks, but the high representative of this social network said that they do not have enough capacities for fact-checking, and they do not know how to do it. But sorry, actually, one of the richest companies in the world, they do not have enough capacities. That's no argument for me. But maybe we can help them in a way how to do it. Then actually projects like SEDMO or civil society projects that were mentioned actually come into place, and let's cooperate more closely together. And maybe we can help also to big tech. It's not just that they will help us. So this is it. And one more point I wanted to mention and underline: it's not just about fact checking. So it was already said here. Actually, let's involve them into support of programs of digital literacy, education, media literacy. That's I think very important.
Thank you. Eglė?
It's hard to add something new, but I will. First of all, it would be really good to see for smaller nations, smaller countries to have native speaker content managers, more of them. Second, it would be great to see the similar initiatives that have been done in CEE regarding fact-checking journalism, supporting NGOs worldwide, because at the moment in Africa, South America, and elsewhere, we live in our very little progressive bubble. However, the rest of the world might not have the same opinion about Ukraine and our region as a whole. And in a true politician manner, I would like to end with an answer to a question that was not even asked regarding the best ways to fight disinformation. I think in our region especially, it's the success story. In Lithuania, we have people whose grandparents' parents are, walking around with Georgievska, Lentochka, Lenin, Stalin supporters, etc. Their children are complete patriots of Lithuania, and they're sitting down with them in their kitchens, speaking and talking about Ukraine. So I really wish and hope that Ukraine, not in 15 to 20 years, as some politicians have said, will use the opportunity, as the Estonian president has rightfully said here, reform everything that has to be reformed, use this window of opportunity, and become a successful country that won't need any additional measures. People will want to be on the winning side.
And yeah, thank you so much. And actually, I'm double thankful for being here because I truly believe that disinformation is attacking our democracy, it's attacking our security, and it also destabilizes society because it erodes trust. Yesterday we had a long discussion about trust, and I think that it's a shared responsibility to rebuild trust, but it's a collective journey, and so that's why I'm very thankful for being here. And if I may, not only big tech, but tech companies in general, meaning that in the supply chain there are also various other companies. We always focus on big tech. Clearly they have a big role to play, but I think all the private sector should brought in and also have some sort of like peer pressure within their, let's say, their peers. And I like very much the very practical approach, and I will respond with a couple of practical approaches. One is some example of what we are already doing. So I mentioned before the Cyber Peace Builders, by which we collaborate with the private sector providing volunteers. And a second example is a sort of like good practice that we develop with the Czech Republic actually, and with Microsoft, specifically in the field of how you can enhance cyber resilience in the healthcare sector. It was at that time, but cooperation with private companies and government is possible and is, let's say, is bearing fruits and results. Soon a compendium will be launched and it will be publicly available. But then let me just make the last remark, which is, I really appreciated what you mentioned before about the fact that we need to raise the voices of civil society. But what I also advocated yesterday for is that let's not only raise the voices, but let's include them in the co-designing. For example, the regulations that you were mentioning for projects, tools, services. We need to have the people that will use those tools involved in the design, in the delivery, and in testing those tools. Or, for example, also in the case of regulations. So let's use us more, let's say, because, yeah, we have a lot to tell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Valeria is looking at me that we're running out of time, so I have just 2 words. Slava Ukraini.